Have you ever thought your actions, even with the best intentions, could lead to tragic consequences? That's exactly what happened to me. In one night, my obsession with control and tradition nearly cost two promising lives. I was the respected Maestro Richard Chambers, and I thought I knew what was best for everyone. But when I tried to break up Olivia and Marcus, two young musicians in love, I never imagined my interference would end in a hospital, with lives at risk and careers on the brink of destruction. In the next few minutes, I'm going to share a story of regret, redemption, and the transformative power of music. It's a lesson I learned too late, but one that can change how you view differences and embrace new possibilities. Brace yourself for an emotional journey that'll make you rethink the true meaning of harmony, both in music and in life. You might have heard whispers about the musical revolution that shook the classical world last year. The unlikely collaboration between Olivia Hartman, our rising star cellist, and Marcus Bennett, a brilliant jazz saxophonist from New Orleans. Their story made headlines, but what you don't know is the role I played in almost crushing their dreams. This is my confession, my journey to redemption. Listen closely, for in my tale lies a lesson about the dangers of closed-mindedness and the transformative power of opening our hearts in music and in life. It all began on a crisp autumn evening. The rehearsal hall was filled with the usual pre-performance tension when Olivia Hartman slipped in late, her cheeks flushed and her eyes sparkling with a fire I'd never seen before. As she took her place in the cello section, I couldn't shake the feeling that something had changed. "Ms. Hartman," I said, my voice sharp with disapproval, "so kind of you to join us. Shall we begin?" Olivia nodded, her face a mixture of apology and defiance. As we started Tchaikovsky's Romeo and Juliet Overture, I watched her closely. Her bow danced across the strings with a newfound passion, her body swaying slightly, a movement that would have been unthinkable just weeks ago. The music swelled, and for a moment, I lost myself in the familiar waves of sound. But then I heard it, a subtle syncopation in Olivia's part, a ghost of swing where there should have been nothing but strict adherence to the score. My baton faltered for a split second before I regained control. "Stop!" I shouted, my voice echoing in the sudden silence. "Ms. Hartman, a word. The rest of you, take 5. As the other musicians filed out, Olivia approached the podium. Her chin was held high, but I could see the uncertainty in her eyes. "Olivia," I began, trying to keep my voice level. "What was that?" "You know better than to improvise during a performance." She took a deep breath before responding. "I'm sorry, Maestro. I didn't realize I was doing it. It's just, I've been exploring some new styles of music lately, and I think it's helping me connect with the emotion of the pieces in a different way." "New styles?" I raised an eyebrow. "You mean jazz?" Olivia's eyes lit up. "Yes, Maestro. Jazz is so much more than just a style. It's a way of feeling the music, of expressing yourself in the moment. I think it could bring something special to our performances." I felt a flash of frustration. "Olivia, you're here to play Tchaikovsky, not to express yourself. If you can't focus on your responsibilities to this orchestra, perhaps we need to reconsider your position." The color drained from her face. You wouldn't." I softened my tone, placing a hand on her shoulder. "Olivia, you have incredible talent. I've watched you grow into one of our finest musicians. Don't throw it all away for some fleeting fascination." She nodded slowly, but I could see the rebellion simmering in her eyes. As she turned to walk away, I called after her, "And Olivia, I expect you to be on time for rehearsals from now on. No more late nights at jazz clubs." That night, unable to shake my unease, I found myself standing outside the Blue Note, one of the city's most famous jazz clubs. The muffled sounds of a saxophone drifted through the door, and against my better judgment, I stepped inside. The club was dimly lit. filled with the clinking of glasses and the low murmur of conversation. And there, on the small stage, was Marcus Bennett. His eyes were closed, his body swaying as he coaxed impossible melodies from his saxophone. The crowd was transfixed, and despite myself, I felt a pull towards the music. As the set ended, I watched Olivia rush to the stage, her face glowing with admiration. She threw her arms around Marcus, and the intimacy of their embrace made my stomach churn. This wasn't just about music anymore. Over the next few weeks, I pushed Olivia harder than ever in rehearsals, pointing out every minor flaw, every deviation from the score. I scheduled extra practices, leaving her no time for her nighttime excursions. And when that wasn't enough, I began to plant seeds of doubt. "You know, Olivia," I said one day as she was packing up her cello, "I've been thinking about your future with the orchestra. There's a solo coming up in our spring concert that I think you'd be perfect for." Her eyes lit up. "Really? That's amazing, Maestro. Thank you." I nodded, my voice carefully neutral. Of course, it would require absolute dedication. No distractions. I'd hate to see you miss this opportunity because of outside influences. The implication hung heavy in the air between us. Olivia's smile faltered, but she quickly composed herself. "I understand, Maestro. You can count on me." As she left, I felt a twinge of guilt, but I pushed it aside. This was for her own good, for the good of our orchestra. I was saving her from making a terrible mistake, but my actions were having unintended consequences. Olivia's playing, once so precise and controlled, became erratic. Some days she played with a fire that threatened to consume the entire orchestra. Other days she seemed lifeless, going through the motions without any real passion. It all came to a head during a crucial rehearsal for our upcoming concert. Olivia was late again, and when she finally arrived, her eyes were red-rimmed, her hands shaking slightly as she set up her cello. We began to play, and for a few minutes, everything seemed normal. But then, in the middle of a delicate passage, Olivia's bow screeched across the strings, producing a sound so discordant it made everyone wince. "Stop! Stop!" I shouted, my frustration boiling over. "Ms. Hartman, what is going on? This is completely unacceptable." Olivia stood up, her cello clattering to the floor. "What's going on?" she said, her voice rising. "What's going on is that I can't do this anymore. I can't be this perfect, emotionless robot you want me to be." The other musicians watched in stunned silence as Olivia continued, tears streaming down her face. "Music is supposed to be alive, Maestro. It's supposed to make you feel something, but all I feel here is empty." I stepped down from the podium, my voice low and dangerous. "If you can't handle the demands of this orchestra, Miss Hartman, perhaps it's time for you to leave." She stared at me for a long moment, then nodded slowly. "You're right. It is time for me to leave." And with that, she turned and walked out of the rehearsal hall, leaving her cello behind. The silence that followed was deafening. I stood there, my baton hanging uselessly at my side, as the magnitude of what had just happened washed over me. I'd pushed too hard, and now I'd lost her. It was late evening when my phone rang. The voice on the other end was frantic, unfamiliar. "Is this Maestro Chambers?" "It's about Olivia Hartman. There's been an accident." The world seemed to tilt on its axis. I listened in horror as the caller explained that Olivia had been in a car crash, that she was in critical condition at the hospital. As I rushed out of my office, my mind raced with guilt and fear. Had my actions led to this? At the hospital, I found Marcus Bennett pacing in the waiting room, his face a mask of anguish. When he saw me, his eyes hardened. "You," he spat. "This is your fault. You pushed her too hard, made her doubt herself." She was upset, distracted, That's why she crashed. I wanted to argue, to defend myself, but the words died in my throat, because deep down, I knew he was right. We sat in tense silence for hours, waiting for news. Finally, a doctor emerged, looking tired but relieved. "She's stable," he announced. It was touch and go for a while, but she's going to pull through. The relief was palpable, but it was short-lived. As the doctor continued to explain Olivia's injuries, one detail stood out like a discordant note in a symphony: nerve damage in her left hand. It might heal in time, but there was a chance she'd never play the cello again. The realization hit me like a physical blow. In my misguided attempt to protect Olivia, to preserve what I saw as the only right way to make music, I nearly destroyed her. And for what? Because I was afraid of change? Because I couldn't see the beauty in a form of music different from my own? As I watched Marcus rush to Olivia's bedside, I saw the love between them, the connection that went beyond music. And I realized that in my obsession with perfection, I'd forgotten the most important thing. Music in all its forms is about connection. It's about emotion. It's about life. In that moment, I made a decision. It wouldn't be easy, and it wouldn't erase the harm I'd done, but it was a start. Months later, I stood backstage at Carnegie Hall, my heart pounding. The concert hall was packed, buzzing with anticipation. This wasn't our usual crowd. There were jazz enthusiasts mixed in with our regular patrons, all curious about what had been billed as a groundbreaking fusion of classical and jazz. I peeked out at the audience, spotting Olivia's parents sitting in the front row, their faces a mixture of concern and pride. A few rows behind them, I saw James Bennett, Marcus's father, looking equally anxious but determined to be there. Olivia appeared beside me, her left hand still wrapped in a brace, but her eyes shining with excitement. "Are you ready, Maestro?" I nodded, managing a small smile. "As ready as I'll ever be. And please call me Richard." She squeezed my arm gently. "Thank you for doing this. It means more than you know." As I stepped onto the podium, facing both my orchestra and Marcus's jazz ensemble, I took a deep breath. This concert was more than just a performance. It was an apology, a new beginning, and a celebration of the unifying power of music. I raised my baton, and as the first notes filled the air, classical strings intertwining with the sultry wail of a saxophone, I felt something I hadn't experienced in years, the pure, unadulterated joy of creation. Olivia and Marcus performed a duet, her cello and his saxophone engaged in a conversation that transcended genre. It wasn't perfect, it wasn't predictable, but it was alive in a way that took my breath away. As the final notes faded and the audience erupted in applause, I looked out at the sea of faces, some tear-stained, all moved. I saw Olivia's parents embracing, their expressions filled with wonder and pride. I saw James Bennett on his feet, cheering for his son with unabashed joy. And I realized that this beautiful, messy, emotional fusion of styles, this was the future of music. Not the rigid perfection I'd championed for so long, but a living, breathing art form that could adapt and grow. My error had nearly cost us everything, but in admitting that error, in opening myself up to change, I discovered a whole new world of possibilities. And as I turned to bow to the audience, my eyes met Olivia's. She smiled, and in that smile, I saw forgiveness, gratitude, and hope for the future. This wasn't an ending. It was a rebirth, a renaissance. And I, Richard Chambers, once the staunchest defender of tradition, was proud to be a part of it. As we filed off stage, surrounded by congratulations and excitement, I caught sight of Marcus and Olivia, their hands intertwined, lost in their own world. And I smiled, knowing that sometimes the most beautiful harmonies come from the most unexpected places. My journey wasn't over. There was still much to learn, much to atone for. But for the first time in years, I looked to the future not with fear, but with anticipation. Because music, like love, knows no boundaries. And in the end, that's a lesson worth learning, no matter how long it takes. In the days that followed, I found myself reflecting on the wisdom that comes with age and experience. I realized that my resistance to change had been rooted in fear. Fear of the unknown, fear of losing what I thought was important, but in embracing change, in opening my heart to new possibilities, I had gained so much more than I ever could have imagined. As I watch Olivia and Marcus continue to push the boundaries of music, blending classical precision with jazz improvisation, I'm reminded of the importance of staying open to new ideas, no matter how old we are. Their passion, their willingness to take risks and challenge conventions, has breathed new life into our orchestra and into me. And isn't that what life is all about? Learning, growing, and finding beauty in unexpected places? As I stand before my orchestra now, I see not just musicians but storytellers, each with their own unique voice contributing to a greater harmony. To those who might be facing their own crossroads, who might be tempted to cling to the familiar rather than embrace the unknown, I say this: take the leap. You never know what beautiful music you might make.